So I just did catalytic converters on my brother's truck here. I'm dealing with a p219a, and I'm just trying to look at anything that may be some sort of anomalies in the live data. But I don't know if this data set is just too slow. It's 1 second per division with the live data. What's going on is no drivability problems. I wound up putting catalytic converters on here with aftermarket Walker sensors that O'Reilly sell. And after fixing that P0420 code and loss of power, this code wound up coming up. So at the moment, I'm just reviewing data, seeing if there's anything wrong with the heated oxygen sensors. I did look up the code setting criteria, and it seems like there's no range in which this code will manifest, which I'm trying to look for. Maybe it's just my ignorance right now. But I'm going to read more into it and to what creates this code. So if I can see it, then I can better manage it. So it could be intake manifold, mass airflow, any vacuum leaks, things of that nature. But my fuel trims are fine. They're below 10% in a good range. So they're close to zero. They're not out of whack. It could have been heated oxygen sensors, aftermarket parts, which is understandable, and I'm not going to blame that, but I'm looking, so that's why I'm looking at, the heater command versus the actual output amp wise. Is there any difference here? The first thing I want to do is swap the oxygen sensors and see if that makes a difference, because again, my fuel trims are good. They're not, there's long-term there. I already cleaned the mass airflow sensor. It helped out a lot. I reset the alcohol content. That didn't make much of a difference, and I did not expect it to, because it wasn't a global problem. It's only favoring bank 1. I still have all the old sensors, so the first thing I'm naturally going to do is just swap the new upstream sensors and see if the problem moves over. If it do, then it's kind of obvious what the problem is. If it don't, then I'm going to definitely look elsewhere. Let me see if I can read some more information on Identifix and see if I can get more detail as far as actually putting my eyeballs on this code. So it's the next day after doing some investigating on what could cause this issue from Identifix. I didn't have any specific ranges for this particular code, so naturally I'm like, all right, well, let me just bring up the maintenance on it. I was going to do an induction service for the fuel system because most people on Identifix had that problem, but I'm like, normally injectors don't cause that because our fuel trims aren't extreme. So I remember my brother having a misfire on cylinder 1. So I went on, this actually, as a matter of fact, here's the old plug. Here's the old plug right here. Mind you, the catalytic converter was bad, but look at that, the insulations broke off in there, and this plug has been sitting in that battery tray for a while. But this is the idea of how it looked, and it was blatantly causing a misfire. So this was an inefficient burn. Here's the original plug on 3. I think they're new numbered like that on this one. So 1, the next one is 3, and look at that gap. It burns good, but the gap is extremely excessive. So I'm gonna bring the maintenance up on here, replace the plugs. I think I can get away without replacing the wires, but I'm going to buy a wire set just in case, and I'm going to test drive it again and see if that fuel trim and balance code still persists. And this is, I haven't thrown any parts at it besides replacing the catalytic converters because it had a misfire and I needed to replace that. Got those done. Car has power, runs great, and I did swap the oxygen sensors, thinking that could have been an aftermarket issue, but it's not. Issue stayed on that same side. So let me go ahead and check the maintenance on this. And the maintenance items for the spark plugs are excessively out of spec here. So let's change the plugs, and I'm going to buy some wires. I'm going to consider it, but I might not follow through with it, and then we'll clear the code, test drive it, and see if it comes back. I am going to put NGKs back in there, so I'm not mad at it. I don't care about like brand like some people, but I am not putting auto lights. I am putting NGKs in there. So I got the plugs replaced all on bank 1. I put some new wires on there. Wound up using the laser iridium by NGK. These are going to work out just fine. So iridium is what goes in here. Didn't know that. So number 7, that should be number 7 in the back if this is bank 1. This was the worst with the gap being excessive. And mind you, our code was on bank 1. Look at the sides here, the porcelain. This is not rubbing off. We just had some misfires on this bank too. It wasn't showing on misfire scan data, or because I went to look at live misfire data and it didn't show. But being that this is not rubbing off is a good indication that we likely had some arcing from this plug under the right circumstances. Some vehicles are a little bit more sensitive when it comes to misfire than others, but we definitely are dealing with inefficient burn because of that excessive gap. Let's see if I can get this to focus. Yeah, that's like, using one hand here. Yeah, that gap is like 2-3 millimeters. That's a hell of a gap. So we should be fine on this bank. I'm gonna cross my fingers and hope that resolves this issue, but I don't like throwing parts at vehicles. Being that this was, I naturally was going to go to a maintenance item. I need to check maintenance and make sure all the maintenance is brought up before I just say, okay, let me go ahead and do an induction service on the fuel system. So we got this replaced, and this, I'm going to test drive it after I get this other bank done with, and then we'll see if this code gets resolved or not, because it'll come back pretty rapidly. So I got the bank 2 plugs replaced. They were just as bad. Let me see if we can get these up. They were just as bad, but they didn't have the, what I assume to be potential arcing conditions in the porcelain here. So the body is fine. The plugs are just naturally worn. They're not aged, but because normally I look for that flash bang on the porcelain here, but this doesn't display that, likely due to the fact that these are a better quality plug, NGK. And mind you, I do have factory wires installed. O'Reilly's did have AC Delco wires, but again, you can see the gap is very excessive, well out of the service limit. Typically they're going to be around 40 thousandths typically, but iridium's in there. You don't have to gap those. They're installed and everything went smooth. Now, one thing I do want to note, just for any small variable, because mass airflow sensor was a possibility on Identifix, and again, I'm bringing up the maintenance to reinforce the idea that the engine has the capability of working efficiently to isolate the injectors. It needs these spark plugs. Anyway, the intake hose, this is loose. I just noticed that when I was climbing up in the engine compartment. I guess all the air needs to be accounted for, but this can cause some sort of variable in the flow dynamics. So I'm going to tighten this up, and if it do cure, if the spark plugs and this cures it, then we have an idea that we need to check for the plumbing or the intake hose and make sure everything's tight. So I did not notice this to be a problem. But I do believe while it's loose, I should just go ahead and take this off and clean the throttle body with brake cleaner. Yeah, that was really loose. So we're gonna clean the throttle body out. And a lot of y'all kind of got on my ass about cleaning the mass airflow sensor on this vehicle with brake cleaner. It's not gonna hurt anything. It dries really fast. It's a solvent, it cleans. I haven't had any issues yet. And with that said, By y'all logic, if I clean this with brake cleaner, I should damage this. But being that your logic is the variable or the exception to the rule and not the rule, it's not going to apply. So I don't operate that way. Just like we don't operate on the fact that we can go outside and get struck by lightning. It's a fraction of a percent that it'll happen. We don't operate that way. We go off the fact that majority of the time we live. So why would I be worried about getting struck by lightning? You just take precautions on things, just like you do with life. So with that said, I'm going to continue to use brake cleaner for everything because this is the hot sauce of working on cars. Use it for cleaning, starting fluid, brake service, engine parts cleaner, whatever you name it, throttle body cleaner. It works. I guess the next thing people are going to tell me I should use green rags instead of blue rags to wipe off the throttle plate. So, yeah, anyway, I'm going to start the car up. It's not going to start up immediately because I sprayed a crap ton of brake cleaner in there. And if I need to and it don't learn the throttle body, I'll do a throttle relearn through the scan tool. But here's a close-up at what the brake cleaner did to the throttle body. Man, that looks horrible. It ate that brake cleaner up pretty good. Let me clear the codes, if any, generated through that startup from any misfires or any rich codes. See how the throttle body is responding. Then take it on test drive. So 219a is still active. I haven't cleared it yet, but I am going to do a throttle relearn because what happens, it just holds the throttle a little longer than normal. So I want to do a throttle relearn. It's a possibility due to the fact I have the AC on, and that's a load. Throttle position, power balance, composition, service bay, idle relearn. Let's see if it shows any accommodation. Thought about it, idle compensation is 74%. Yeah, we're gonna have to drop that significantly. Engine is running. I need to shut it off. I tend to never follow directions. Okay. I'd imagine with the compensation, it needs to be around 14%. It definitely shouldn't be that high. And that throttle body was pretty dirty. Yeah, throttle body idle airflow compensation. Let's see if we can. All right, idle relearn complete. Press OK to quit. So our values should be at 0, and then the car should automatically adjust. So it's at 0. Let me show you now. Until it relearns it, it'll see how it comes down now. So that compensation is gone. Let me take it on my test drive. Oh, as a matter of fact, let me go ahead and clear this code first. Then we'll see if it makes any changes. I do need to check the fuel trim because before it was positive. Let me see if the codes are gone. They should be. So they were up around positive 10. Let's see if it started taking away. Yeah, so no codes there. We got a clean slate. Let's look at our fuel trim. I think the excessive brake cleaner should have burned itself off. So we're at long term +6, +7. They're pushing to negative, and it has not relearned its cell yet. So we're still below 10, which is fine. My thing is it stable? Let's look at the mass airflow, because before it was kind of dancing around between 5.13 grams per second to 6.27 or something. Did I pass it already? There we go. I'm just going to isolate this, change our graph to metric. Let's see. So it's higher, and it seems to be more stable. So it's not dropping down to 5.13. Hasn't done it yet, and it's staying above. Well, it dropped a little bit. Again, that the AC's on, so that's a load. Yeah, like the AC kicked on, so it's gonna fluctuate. But it's staying higher longer. Fuel trims are dropping. We're going to 0. So let me take it on test drive and see if this fixes our issue. If not, then I'm going to do the induction service before I actually replace the injectors. So it's the next morning. I put several miles on this truck, so about 30 miles, and the check engine light did pop back on. And mind you, yesterday, what I didn't document, I drove it 10 miles, no check engine light. Everything was fine. So 10 to 15, I want to say. It was fine. Normally, the check engine light will pop on about 5 miles for that fuel imbalance. So I'm thinking, because I did a drive cycle and completed everything almost, we're probably dealing with evap. Hopefully. Let's see. I'm a little nervous right now. You got 6,000 check engine light. Oh, no. Still same one. Same one. That's crazy. So it took a little longer to generate this time. And, well, I guess the only thing I can do next is something fuel related. And the thing is, I don't like not. I had a phone call. So I want to look at the freeze frame. And the bad thing, the thing is, I don't like not being able to see what ranges I need to be in, because I don't like to guess and replace and stuff, because it kind of hurts me. But in regards to our long-term fuel trim, okay, +10, it's not bad. Fuel pressure is fine. It's not extremely lean to where it's having a compensate. And from what I know about the fuel imbalance issue from like the newer cars, being that they can specify the cylinder, well, based off the 720-degree rotation, the vehicle can determine, based off the oxygen sensor fall off or peaks or valleys, which cylinder has the imbalance. Now, this car, I guess, is since it's a rudimentary system in comparison to new vehicles with the air-fuel ratio, it can pinpoint the cylinder. This doesn't have that capability. So with that said, I can swap injectors from one bank to another, or I can just do the induction system. And I'm going to take the induction route because I don't like cleaning injectors. I'm not a big fan of them, and I do want to see if it works or not. So I could probably use, something oil-based, seafoam or whatever. I don't care for it, and probably add the elixir of a combination of other injector cleaners, maybe the B12, do an extremely strong concentrate, because I'm pouring a whole bottle in there, and like a 50-50 mix, and that's probably what I would do. Let me do some thinking here, and maybe there's some other tests I could probably do, but I don't want to make this video long and drawn out, but I would like to see it specifically what's going on. So the standard I'm getting on bank 2 is going to be number 4 cylinder. So I have the amp clamp hooked up, and I have the voltage hooked up. I have it on a low voltage scale, so for every 1 millivolt is 10 milliamps. So this is the standard here. We're making around 1 amp So we're at excuse me, so we're at around about, on the green trace, it's going to be the amp, so right at around 1 amp. Here's our voltage here on the red trace, and we can see how it gets pulled down and released. So this is our peak hold here down at this valley. So that's the computer telling it to open and hold, and you can see how a current ramp builds, and when it releases you can see how it ramps and descends. So this is going to be the standard. I'm going to go to bank 1, do that same test on all of them, and see if any of them are outside the range of normality, since this is going to be our standard and we don't have any issues on bank 2. So all the, how about I say, ignition, all the fuel injectors were fine for the exception of number 7. I got this weird spike neighboring the actual event for, let me see if I can't even walk and chew gum. So I got this is the only one that had this and then the actual event. I don't understand why that's happening, but if I go through all the other fuel injectors, it's not doing it. If I go to what is it, if I switch to the ground side, it's gone, but if I go to the positive side, which I'm on now, this happens. Let me move some things around and see if I can get it to change state. I did move the wires from the coil because I'm like, maybe that's some interference with that, but it don't seem to be the case. Yeah, that's weird. I need to back test. I could disconnect it and see if it goes away, and that'll give me some idea of what I got going on. But for the most part, everything's been going on uniform. The same wire, the same hot wire, the same trigger wire. Everything's been pretty uniform. But this is the only one that has this anomaly here. Let me disconnect and see if it changes. So this is number 7. For some strange reason, number 5 is not generating this same square wave, and I'm not sure it's like an IGF like Toyota or not. Let me go back to 5. Yeah, it's not doing anything. All the other ones would generate that square wave. 5 isn't doing it, and like I said, I'm not sure if it's an IGF like a confirmation, but it does go in sync when it did work with the fuel injector, and I'm not sure if that had anything to do with it, but it may be worth looking into. I know this is unrelated, but what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna swap this coil with another bank and see if the problem moves. It's gonna be a slow process, but I need to see if I can get that. See if that had any influence, that right there has any influence on this bank having issues. So being that this coil doesn't have that same square wave, and I imagine it's a control or probably like an IGF, I'm gonna swap that and see if it goes away. Oh, it's still there. Weird. So pretty much, I tested all the injectors. The waveform came out fine. They were all uniform. And I was on number 4, not number 4, number 7. Number 7, that is not where I need to be. You know, I questioned number 7 and number 1, but they all were uniform, made below 60 volts, and current ramp was right at 1 amp. So I'm not gonna question so much. I mean, I can just, the only thing I can do is pretty much replace those injectors or swap them if I want to be absolute safe. But this seeming like it's going to be one of those common things where if everybody else had injector problems, replace the injectors. The even bank was the standard. All of those checked out, and they were uniform with this bank on number 1. Just like the solenoid on a Nissan, hell, I can test the amps, and the current flow, the voltage, the spikes and stuff, and it wound up being like a weak component. It happens. So when I pull these injectors out on bank 1, I'm gonna inspect those and see if maybe there's some debris. It could be a spray pattern problem, you know, atomization. And again, I'm not dealing with any intake leaks or anything, but depending on what conditions aren't satisfied, and this, being that the description said it was picky, this is probably what we're dealing with. It just needs some uniformity across the board, and we just could have a bad injector under the right circumstances failing. So it got better when I did the tune-up with the plugs, but the last thing that needs to be is just going to be those injectors, and it needs to have that particular spray pattern or the atomization for proper combustion. I wish it was intelligent enough to be able to tell us the cylinder, but it's just not. It's still old in comparison to newer vehicles. So let me get some injectors. So there's nothing blatant obstructing these injectors that I can see. It could be just be efficiency and spray pattern related. That's what I'm going to chalk it up to. O'Reilly's have 4 of them. I got them ordered. They're 80 something each, 89 or something like that each. So I'm going to replace all 4 on this bank. And to be even more transparent, when I look back in hindsight, you know, the Volvo, the Hondas and stuff that I did with the valve problems, you know, you can do a fuel balance test, a fuel trim balance test, and it'll test the injectors. The Hondas, they were 2018, 2019 were a lot more specific with the cylinders, but typically we just would replace all the injectors anyway. Unfortunately, it's going to be a little difficult to determine which one, but it's possible. If the car knows, you can find out. I mean, and I'm just not going to go through the depth of trying to figure it out with the oscilloscope because the volume of work that I have. At this stage, I just got to go with what's common, and it's going to be the injectors. So once I get these injectors installed, I'll test drive it and see how it responds. But based off of what I've dealt with before in the past, it's going to be the injectors. I just don't have any other. I don't have any other way of challenging it. I mean, I brought the maintenance up as a necessity, and the fuel imbalance, just pattern probably related. They're just probably becoming obstructed under the right circumstances. So let's get those in there and see how it responds. I'll be back when I do a drive cycle. So change of plans. So I thought about just buying new injectors, but I'm like, let me just try cleaning right quick. I did something that people would not do. I cleaned them with diesel. I only did it because people hate it. I have a non-dismantle fuel injection cleaning system. So I have an old fuel rail laying around that I locked those up into and was able just to activate them with the fuel supply from diesel. So I did clean these. These are the one with the X. The old ones I didn't mark. The ones that I'm changing, the good ones I didn't mark. So bank 2 is going to bank 1, and bank 1 is going to bank 2, and I have indicated those. So I'm gonna swap them, see if this code follows the issue, because I'll feel better about changing the injectors if the issue follows the parts. And I just because those things are $400, and it's a possibility the code may not come back if the diesel cleaned them. And I only did it because y'all hate when I clean stuff with diesel. Everybody have their perception on it. So let's get these back installed and see what happens after this drive cycle. Let's see if it starts after cleaning injectors with diesel. I guess some people are gonna say I got lucky, right? So here's an update after a while of driving. I did manage to complete a drive cycle for a few monitors. So there's no check engine light, catalyst is okay, and EGR system's okay. So we got 4 that are incomplete. 1, 2, 3, 3 that's incomplete. Now, the new pattern I have discovered is as long as there's no misfire on cylinder 3 and 5 is fine. The only time that cylinder imbalance code will come about is when a misfire is discovered. And I tried to take a screenshot while driving here, and I managed to get two misfires on cylinder 3. So it's only these 2, and they're isolated on bank 1, which is giving me more direction. So it can be valve related or something in the combustion process, but it's definitely not going to be ignition system related, which is still kind of the question mark. And it's definitely not going to be fuel related because we swapped those injectors to the other bank. So if it seems to be more prominent during a transition into normal operating temperatures. So when it gets hot from 0 degrees basically up to 100 or 200 degrees, when it's in that heat soak phase, in the higher temperatures, that's when it's more susceptible, it seems. So I'm getting a little further. So we know what cylinders we're dealing with, and we know that when it's hot, like right now, I can drive it, it's not going to happen. But when it sits for a while, it's more susceptible to misfire, and it's going to generate that code. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to drive it again because I got to get some gas, and I'm going to try to get this misfire captured if it happens during this drive cycle here. And then I'll get some screenshots. And then, like I said, it's only on those. I'm just gonna get the odd bank, since that's the one we're dealing with. Like right now, it feels a little shaky. It could be because of motor mounts. It's not detecting a misfire or anything. Where's my speed? Where's my speed? Did I pass it? There we go. So I'll try to get it and update. So it's been days later, and I've been dealing with this p219a fuel trim imbalance on bank 1. I'm kind of indecisive. I want to just give you the whole video of how everything got to this point, but being that the internet attention span is like the size of a nickel, it's kind of hard to keep people's attention and provide substance and answers. Not everybody operate the same, and it seemed like the majority of people don't care about data stuff, so I'll try to be generic. Well, I've been talking for 36 seconds. Let's just move on. This